Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Prosecutors in New Mexico have decided to bring criminal charges against actor Alec Baldwin in the accidental shooting of a cinematographer on the set of the movie Rust back in 2021. Mary Carmack Altuiz, the district attorney in Santa Fe County, said today that Baldwin didn't have to touch each projectile. He didn't have to touch each piece of ammunition. But, she added, he had an absolute duty to know that what is in the gun that is being placed in his hand is safe. Oh, please. Baldwin is guilty of a lot of things, like a bad Trump impersonation, too many kids, little pompous. He's also guilty of producing a movie on the cheap that resulted in a non-union crew handing him a fully loaded pistol. But there is no way Alec Baldwin could check or would even know how to check to see if the gun was loaded, because Alec Baldwin is a Hollywood liberal from New York who doesn't know a handgun from a pastry gun. This is clearly a prosecutor trying to make a name for herself. Go get the real criminals. I'm David Feldman, and this is The Mop-Up. Go get the real criminals, like Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot 2 people to death with his AR-15 and gravely wounded another back in August of 2020 when he decided to self-deputize during a Black Lives Matter protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Rittenhouse was 17 at the time. Nobody asked him to walk the streets. He took it upon himself, and eventually a jury felt sorry for this uneducated 17-year-old dullard and acquitted him, agreeing that he, this moron, acted in self-defense. Self-defense. The 2 people he killed were not armed. This kid, Kyle Rittenhouse, is an ignoramus who shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a knife and fork, let alone an AR-15. But Alec Baldwin is going to go on trial for involuntary manslaughter and probably get convicted because he's a pretty outspoken liberal Democrat. But Kyle Rittenhouse walks free. This is America, where the dumber you are, the more power you are given, either in weapons or influence among diehard Republicans. If you are one of the stupidest people in the world, you're set for life. All you need is a fully loaded weapon and a job in Republican politics. That is why Kyle Rittenhouse has become a folk hero among gun-toting white supremacists like Tucker Carlson, Turning Point's USA leader Charlie Kirk, and former President Donald Trump, who invited Kyle Rittenhouse down to Mar-a-Lago in 2021, right after Kyle was wrongly acquitted. Trump said he was a fan of Kyle's. A fan. Yeah, I love your work. I love your work. I'm a fan. Trump's a fan. I famously said I could stand in the middle of the street and shoot someone and get away with it. But you actually did it, Kyle. You actually got away with it. You stood in the middle of the street like I said I could, and you got away with it. What a nice young man. That's what Trump called Rittenhouse, quote unquote, a nice young man. Kyle Rittenhouse, unlike Alec Baldwin, is a murderer. And he's too stupid to be allowed to carry an AR-15. I know that Kyle Rittenhouse is too stupid to carry an AR-15 because he killed 2 people with it in self-defense. In self-defense, even though he had the AR-15 and they didn't. That's how stupid Kyle Rittenhouse is. which is why Donald Trump is such a fan. Kyle Rittenhouse is the son Donald never had, because Donald's his sons only kill defenseless animals. Donald's sons, unlike Kyle Rittenhouse, they lack the courage to kill defenseless human beings. Kyle Rittenhouse is a mental defective, and he has not paid his debt to society. He killed 2 unarmed people and got away with it because somehow he was able to claim he acted in self-defense. He should be haunted for the rest of his life by this. He should be in jail, but he's not going to jail. He should go back to school and learn to do something with his life and then spend the rest of it atoning for taking 2 innocent lives. He's free, but tonight, Alec Baldwin is facing 18 months in prison for involuntary manslaughter. Kyle Rittenhouse roams free, but a Santa Fe district attorney today has charged Alec Baldwin with involuntary manslaughter in the accidental shooting of that cinematographer on the set of the Western Baldwin was starring in. Now, come on, think about this. Accidental manslaughter? Are you effing kidding me? He was handed a gun and told to point it. It went off, or he accidentally pulled the trigger. But someone, not Alec Baldwin, put a live round in there. He had nothing to do with it. He had no idea the gun was loaded. The only thing Alec Baldwin is guilty of tonight is being the producer of a movie, Rust, that fired the union crew the night before the shooting, and they decided to work on the cheap. But involuntary manslaughter because a gun he was handed went off? Are you effing kidding me? Meanwhile, Kyle Rittenhouse is in the news. He's in the news this week because he's running around the country making a living doing speaking engagements. And some of those speaking engagements are getting canceled. He is making a lot of money doing speaking engagements because the right, they take care of their own. And by their own, morons who like shooting things. So Kyle is making money doing speaking engagements. What does this moron talk about? He talks about the woke mob that's trying to punish him. Someone has to punish you, Kyle. Our courts won't. You killed 2 people. You are a murderer, Kyle Rittenhouse. You need to be punished. You murdered 2 people in cold blood. And this woke mob that you speak of doesn't think you should be allowed to earn money doing speaking engagements, misrepresenting what happened. You are doing speaking engagements, and the woke mob, including me, believe that whatever you earn should go to your victims' families. And so this week, some of Kyle Rittenhouse's speaking engagements were canceled because any venue that provides an opportunity for a murderer to make money off his murder should be held accountable. And some venues this week buckled under the woke pressure. Here is Kyle Rittenhouse yesterday on Sebastian Gorka's radio show. It can be heard on the Salem Radio Network. Salem Radio is a self-identified Christian conservative radio network. They present Christian conservative-themed programming. That's how they sell their shows to advertisers. Christian conservative-themed programming like Sebastian Gorka. And what is more Christian than Kyle Rittenhouse, who kills 2 innocent people with an AR-15. So here is the murderer, Kyle Rittenhouse, complaining about the woke mob. This was yesterday, the woke mob that's trying to silence Kyle, not for what he said, but for what he did. You killed 2 people. This isn't about your freedom of speech. It's about you being a murderer, and any venue that helps you earn a living off those murders should be held accountable. Here's Kyle complaining about the woke mob.
I was supposed to be giving a speech at Southern Pub Brewery with Defiance Press, and they booted us because the woke mob found out I posted about it. I tried to promote it to get people to come and hear about censorship and the Second Amendment, and they didn't like that. They bent to the woke mob, and they said, we're canceling this event. Thank goodness we were able to reschedule. It's now going to be at Lone Star Convention Center in Conroe, Texas, where you can come and watch me speak. But just recently, as of this morning, the Oak Room at the Vention canceled us and bent to the woke mob saying, we aren't going to host you guys anymore.
Did you hear that? The Oak Room at the Venetian canceled him. Did you hear that? Today, the Oak Room in the Venetian, the hotel in Las Vegas that's built to look like Venice, ergo, hence, and therefore, Kyle, it's called the Venetian. Notice the way this moron, this murderous moron, pronounces the Venetian.
Oak Room at the Vention.
The Oak Room at the Vention.
Oak Room at the Vention.
You stupid, illiterate, gun-toting, murderous moron. It's pronounced the Venetian.
Oak Room at the Vention.
You idiot. You should not be allowed to even look at a gun. It's the Venetian.
Oak Room at the Vention.
How stupid can one person possibly be not to know it's pronounced Venetian? I would say that Kyle Rittenhouse is the dumbest person in America, but then I remembered there are Americans paying to hear him speak at the Veneton or the Venetian. People were lining up at the Oak Room at the Venetian or the Veneton to hear a man-child who thinks Venetian is pronounced Veneton. They're paying money to hear this moron speak, which means there are actually people who are dumber than the murderous Kyle Rittenhouse. One more time.
Oak Room at the Vention.
Okay. There are some real idiots, and they're getting dumber and dumber in the conservative movement. And one of those idiots is the new Speaker of our House, Kevin McCarthy. Dumb, can't count votes. That's why they had to have 15 ballots. They had to vote 15 times for him to become Speaker. This idiot, Kevin McCarthy, and I do mean idiot, just gave 2 committee assignments to my friend, George Santos. I love George Santos. And I've played this before, but I love George Santos. He is the gift that just keeps giving. Here is Republican, we just found this. Here is Republican Congressman George Santos during a debate last summer. Here he is asking his opponent a question.
George, do you have an honest moment inside of you ever?
How can you not love this? I'm worried that he's going to go away. I'm going to miss him. As you all know, George Santos has told a couple of lies about his religion, his marital status, how his mother died. He's accused of stealing credit cards, checkbooks, and a Burberry scarf. Even worse, he reportedly stole $3,000 from a GoFundMe page for a sick dog. And he's not even close to being the worst member of this Republican House. As I said, he is the gift that keeps giving. Santos is a Republican who supports Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. But now, today, it turns out that Santos probably was a drag queen back in Brazil. And you know how much the Republican Party loves drag queens. A Brazilian drag queen told ABC News this morning that Santos used to perform under the drag queen name of Kitara Ravache. Maybe a little too off-brand for the Republican Party, maybe not. Here is what the Speaker of the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, had to say.
George Santos, if there is a concern, he will go through ethics.
Really? You're going to put him through ethics? Kevin McCarthy, do you even know where the ethics office is? You've just defunded the ethics office. There is no ethics. The Republicans are in charge.
George, do you have an honest moment inside of you ever?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have an honest bone in him at all. Well, Elise Stefanik is part of the Republican House leadership, and she held another press conference.
Welcome to the Republican majority in the 118th Congress.
Oh, thank you, opportunistic infection, Harvard graduate Elise Stefanik. What do you have planned for us in the 118th Congress?
House Republicans are hitting the ground running, and we are laser focused on passing our Commitment to America agenda and much needed critical oversight of the Biden administration.
Great, much needed oversight of the Biden administration. This is important. This is checks and balances, and she's going to investigate the problem at the southern border by getting testimony from Biden's head of Homeland Security, Hunter Biden. Then she and the Republicans are going to investigate how the Biden administration screwed up the pullout from Afghanistan by getting testimony from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Hunter Biden. Then they're going to go get to the bottom of the origins of COVID by getting testimony from the head of the Centers for Disease Control. That would be Hunter Biden. And then they're going to look into abuse of the IRS by getting testimony from the head of the Internal Revenue Service, Commissioner Hunter Biden. Then Elise Stefanik, this opportunistic infection, she made this solemn promise to America.
We will continue to hold the line and protect the most vulnerable among us.
Well, that's great. She's going to protect the most vulnerable among us. So you're going to investigate the hundreds of thousands of Americans living on the streets and try to figure out how to help them? Or the most vulnerable, you're going to help senior citizens who are living on nothing but Social Security and can't keep up with inflation? You're going to help the most vulnerable, old people who make a minimum wage at McDonald's or minimum wage at Walmart with no help of ever being allowed to join a union? Is that what you mean by the most vulnerable? Opportunistic infection, Elise Stefanik, most vulnerable. When you say the most vulnerable, do you mean our children who are forced to attend crumbling public schools that are understaffed? Most vulnerable, you mean the thousands of Americans evicted each week by greedy landlords, or the families of small children who suffer from food insecurity and are forced to go to food pantries, and these food pantries are empty because there isn't enough money for them? Is that what you mean by protecting the most vulnerable here in America? Do you mean the families in predominantly Black communities that don't have potable drinking water? Elise Stefanik, you opportunistic infection, is that what you mean by our most vulnerable? What do you mean by the most vulnerable?
By bringing the Born Alive Survivors Protection Bill to the floor.
Fetuses. That's the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable in America are the ones who haven't been born yet, according to the Republican Party. Fetuses. So Republicans couldn't care less about anything that's actually alive. The only thing Republicans have to offer for people who are alive are more and more gun-toting half-wits like Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, opportunistic infection, Congresswoman Stefanik, is there anything else you would like to add?
And we are just getting started.
Yes, you are. And that's exactly what I'm afraid of. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the most vulnerable.